Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lowdown. Today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Chris Rush to reflect on his past 15 years working in the football industry and the recent circumstances following his departure from Blackburn Rovers. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hi, Connor.
Chris, it's great to have you on. And you've obviously recently been in the news and recently detailing on LinkedIn and to The Athletic, reflecting on the reasons behind your departure from football. However, could you just begin, I suppose, by giving everybody listening a background of your experience in 15 years working in the industry today?
I probably, as a 17-year-old, worked out that I wanted to work in football. I didn't know until that point that it was an option. I think going back, nearly 20 years now to that point, sports science and support staff members in football wasn't prevalent, but there was a football and science degree at Liverpool John Moores, which I found out about when I was 17. And once I realised that was an option to work in professional football, which I'd obviously, I love football all my life, then I pursued that. So studied at Liverpool John Moores for 3 years, got my undergrad, and did some part-time work at the back end of that with Preston. And obviously times very, very different to what they are now. I came out of that undergraduate degree and went straight into a full-time position working for Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough were one of the first teams at the time, so they were in the Premier League. This was sort of 2006, I think, if I've got my timescales right. They were one of the first teams to take on the GPS system, so sort of took on an archaic GPS system, was involved in a lot of the data work on that side of things, but also practically working with some of the academy teams and the under 23s team. I had 18 months there, and again, very quickly sort of progressed and moved to Man City, working with their under 23s. So basically the under 23s lead with them. Had 4 great years at Man City, saw loads of change. I joined before the current owners took over, saw the process of change when the new owners took over, and had some great experiences there. And then after 4 years, I got an opportunity to go and work with Blackburn Rovers, working with the first team. Again, that was a key thing for me. Sort of all the time in football, I wanted to go and work with the first team, so took that position, moving from Man City to Blackburn. And was there for pretty much 10 years. Loads of ups and downs, a lot of downs initially, and then a bit of an up curve. But yeah, so sort of 15 years around about that, working in football. I had a great time. Like I say, so many great memories, great people that I've worked with. Enjoyed the sort of the day-to-day work, and brought me to this point.
That's fantastic. And I suppose from your initial job at Middlesbrough right now to this present day where you've just left Blackburn, of course, 15 years working at that level, you would have been subjected to so many highs, so many lows. You worked at multiple levels within the game with different resource constraints, varying from working in the championship to at an elite level at Man City. Recently, Adam Crafton wrote a piece on The Athletic to which you were a major contributor and was based on the realities behind working at the scenes of a football club. Now, it details the hours worked, basically the insecurities entailed from the nature of the job. I mean, leading up to your recent departure from Blackburn, would you say there would have been a gradual change in working conditions over time? Or was there one big inflection point?
I think the process really has been, it's very much supply and demand. So when I started off in football, very little supply of support staff because those positions hadn't existed in the past. There was nobody experienced in them. So when you were applying for any jobs, you weren't fighting against anybody with any experience. And if you had a qualification, you had a good chance of getting one of those jobs. And those jobs were paid accordingly because they wanted to attract people into the clubs. They wanted to make sure that they got good people into clubs. And you know, I think my entry salary now, entry salary back in 2006, would have been the same as an entry salary full-time position now. So there's been no inflation of wages from what I can see. But also, I only had to study in undergrad to that point, and not had to go on and fight and find loads of experience and find, you know, loads of different qualifications and accreditations and masters. And like I say, that's purely from a supply point of view of people to fulfill those positions. So then, you know, 18 months later, I go to Manchester City again, because I'd had 18 months at Middlesbrough. It was very quickly, you know, you go to a pretty decent sized club in the Premier League with 18 months experience and an undergrad. And, you know, it just wouldn't happen now. But that was the reality because of the supply. Now, obviously, steadily over time, you know, there's more and more courses, there's more and more opportunities for, let's say, voluntary experience. So there's lots of people going out and getting lots of experiences. So being a head of department, you know, fast forward in 14, 15 years, you look at, you know, you advertise for jobs, you look at CVs, it's unbelievable. Firstly, the number of applicants, the quality of the applicants, the amount of experience, the amount of qualifications. From a qualifications and accreditation point of view, for the most part, I might be hiring a junior person who's more qualified than me, you know, and I think that is just where we currently are, is that you have to almost, you know, you've got your 3 years undergrad, you may be a couple of years on your masters, you're getting your experience, you're getting your accreditations. It's almost like a doctor's level education and experience that you've got to get before you're probably going to get a really good full-time paid position. And because there's so many people who want to do it, you know, it's so vast, then naturally that puts a downward pressure on what clubs are willing to pay, because there's so many people out there that they can hire and potentially for cheaper. So I think it's just been a process over time that as supply of people become more and more prevalent, it's meant the clubs aren't pressured to increase the support or the financial support of the staff.
And I suppose just picking up on one of the points you said there, Chris, was the number of applicants and the experience of each applicant applying for the roles. I mean, on the piece itself, I read, you know, you had one contributor stating that, you know, there was guys with PhDs applying for internships at football clubs. I mean, on a personal level, Chris, were you surprised at maybe the incredulous reaction from some football fans, and not necessarily people involved in the working levels of the game, at some of the experiences which you had to account to Adam Crafton on The Athletic and your own LinkedIn post, so to speak? Because there seems to be very much, you know, if it was any other industry, crying wolf, you know, with such, you know, low salaries, the hours worked, the insecurities stemming from the nature of the job, that there would be absolute uproar. Do you think in itself that football is its own worst enemy at times?
Yeah, I think I don't think you can really get annoyed or frustrated about that. I think that's just a product of what it is. Now, when so going back to when I'm 17, I'm looking from the outside in to football, and I love football, and I go and watch football, and I play football, and everything that I do is football, football, football. I, at that time, would have looked at anybody working in football and thinking, wow, you've got an amazing job, you're so lucky, you know, all these different things. So I understand that perception from the outside. I even understand that perception maybe from people starting out their careers as well. But I think as you get further into it, you do see that it's you know, it is highly demanding. I know a lot of jobs are highly demanding, but you've got so much lack of control over your personal life effectively. You know, even if you're an entrepreneur, if you own your own business, you may be working those hours, and it may be an unsuccessful business, so you might not be getting paid very well, but ultimately you can still decide whether you go to a wedding, whether you go to your kid's birthday, all these different things that you haven't got the freedom to do when you work in football. So I know people will hear that and think, well, that's just a sacrifice to be made, because that's what obviously gets spoken about with players as well. It's kind of like players should be robots. They just sacrifice everything in their lives because they get to be a professional footballer. And I understand that mentality because of they see the salaries, but you got to think bigger picture. Like, these people aren't robots, they are humans, and they do want to go and experience these things in their lives as well. So that is the reality of being in football, and being in football for a longer time, that either you become really, really comfortable and accepting of those sacrifices, or you don't. And that's really a position that I got to. I was no longer comfortable with those sacrifices, whereas in the past I had been. Therefore, I made the decision to come out of football, which was a tough decision, because I still love the sport. I know that once you can start going into stadiums again, I'll be going and watching a lot of football, watching football on TV. I'll still love the sport, but I've seen what it is to actually turn your love and your hobby into a profession, and it's very different.
And I mean, when you look at the recent Pacey performance survey and sports science staff within British football, produced by the Setanta College, the report itself showed that over 2/3 of respondents come from that 25 to 34 age bracket. I mean, we spoke off camera about, at what point does a passion become a profession? You think, I suppose, having such a role in football and being of a certain age bracket is mutually exclusive, or do the two go hand in hand?
It will be interesting how, if that survey is done again in 10, 15 years time, how that looks. Because I think from my side of things, I've had 15 years full time, no break, working in professional football. Now, there won't be many people who can jump in it from 21. So maybe if somebody's career is starting more at, or they're getting to a place where they want to be at 27, 28, and 15 years is the time frame, which doesn't necessarily mean it is, but that might look more like 45 or 50, that they get to a point whereby they've experienced the things that they want to experience and think, right, well, I'll step away. The difficulty is obviously families, so you get through to 50 years of age, kind of potentially your kids have grown up and you've missed a lot of things. I think, retaining experience in the support staffs is really, really important. And if anybody's looking at things in football with a bigger picture, retention of experience, I think is important. This isn't being disrespectful to junior people coming in to football, but I would say that experiencing things, trial and error, is one of the biggest, most important things in the profession. And I cringe at some of the stuff I did in my early days, and it's hard to be 2 or 3 or 4 years into football and be, a really, really top level practitioner, because you've not had the number of experiences in the trial and error to see how things pan out from a long-term perspective. So that the retention of experience is going to be important, and it seems like it's not there at the moment. The number of people, I'm not exaggerating here, genuinely, I think I've spoke to so many people in football working at, really good clubs, and they've had brilliant careers, and pretty much everybody is like, is saying, I was thinking the same thing. It's just exit point, really. You've done something for 15 years. What do you go and do? Where do you go? And there's got to be something there with that, because there can't be so many people with a similar level experience of mine at a similar age, kind of saying, yeah, I can totally see what you're saying. And I've been thinking the same. As much as it seems like it's a whistle blowing or a dramatization or I don't know, whatever it'd be, the reality is it is there, it is there.
And of course, Chris, like guys like yourself and your peers that work in the football industry are highly qualified. And of course, 15 years is quite an accurate time to be making, relevant and honest assumptions. But I suppose, in that 15-year time frame, you would have made other friends, other practitioners from other fields, not just in football, but from other sports. How would you say your experience and your ability to engage in CPD, engage in trial and error, as you speak about, how does that differ from between practitioners in the football industry compared to other practitioners in other aspects of the sports industry?
You know what? I don't know. I don't know because it's we know football's full on. We know the season's very long. That the break isn't maybe as long as some other sports. It then gives you opportunity to kind of relax, reflect, and also maybe go on to some courses that you can't maybe go on mid-season. But it's very difficult for me to kind of say, how different that is in other sports, just because I've never experienced it. I've not got loads and loads of colleagues in other sports. It's a tough one that I think there's a lot of top clubs who really do support CPD. I know at Manchester City, I would bang this drum so much because they had a budget for, you had a personal budget for CPD and it was kind of pushed. It's like, you're not using it, use it, go and do something, go and improve yourself, get yourself better. So I wouldn't say that isn't a focus of some football clubs. I think the lower down you get, where it becomes a little bit more like we're just fighting tooth and nail to win the next game. There's limited resources. It becomes more and more difficult,
And I suppose then looking at the micro level, Chris, until your recent departure, what did a typical week look like at Blackburn?
Yeah, obviously very varied and game schedule dictates. I mean, probably the most demanding is the 2-game weeks. That obviously Christmas and Easter are probably the two most demanding periods, probably psychologically, because families are doing loads of different fun stuff, but you're at work. I think the typical 2-game week for most clubs, there's a lot of clubs who are just in now. They're just in 7 days a week. I think especially top clubs, they're just in all the time. I think I won't name the club, but I heard that, one club was in for like 24 days straight, just because of the game schedule. But for us, or what I would have experienced, it would have been, let's say that you've got a Saturday game, you played Saturday, you come in and do recovery Sunday, you train Monday, you'd obviously play Tuesday, potentially have the Wednesday off, so that would be the day off. You train Thursday, train Friday, play Saturday again. I'd say that's the atypical schedule in a 2-game week. A 1-game week would be very, very specific to the manager and how they do it. Again, there's this discussion about around 6-day weeks, 5-day weeks. What's the best training schedule? Coming on a Sunday for a recovery and have Monday off. And all these factors that they're shrouded in science and experience. But again, if you have Monday off and not Sunday, you're having your day off on your own and you're working on the day when everyone else is off. So listen, these are the factors of the sport, really.
And I mean, of course, when you look at yourself 16, 17 years ago doing that Bachelor of Science degree at John Moores in Liverpool, would you have been aware at the time of, say, what you were saying yourself up for it, the hours worked, the salaries, so to speak?
No, but what I would say is, even if I'd have known, I'd have done it. If I, you
Yeah,
know,
no, of course.
because I wouldn't. I think when you're that age, you know, and you've not experienced something, it doesn't matter, you know. And this is why I think this is not me saying that the situation is not right. Well, it isn't right, but the situation, it shouldn't happen. It is what it is. You know, there's people, me being included, going back, who'll go, I'll work 60-hour weeks. I'll get paid nothing. As long as I can work in football and I can get the experience, I'm not bothered. That's all I want to do. That's my passion. That's my love. And that's fine. And that's fair. Um, as long as people's eyes are open to it. Like I say, for me personally, it wouldn't have changed my decision. I'd have still worked in football. Whether if I was entering now, I'd have stuck it out as long is another question, and I don't know. But I think I would have still done it. I would have still done it, sure.
I think, you know, when you speak to anybody involved at any aspect of the football industry, be it an academy level, sports science level, people involved in fan engagement, the commercial side of the game, you know, when you look at these topics in isolation, of course, we all have a burning desire to work, you know, with respect to them. But I think there's that overarching theme. We're all bounded by working in football. And I think it's sad to say when, you know, one of the questions I mentioned earlier on to you, you know, at what point does a passion become a profession? No, there are sad times indeed. But I think it's just when more information becomes readily available over time. So, I mean, fast forward 15 years, we spoke off camera, you know, a wage you would have been on 15 years ago is pretty much comparable to what guys are receiving now. And that doesn't show, you know, any ascension over time. It doesn't show any inflation, any improvement in working conditions. I suppose where I'm coming from with this question is, Chris, I mean, having attended a football specific university myself, UCFB, and yourself at Liverpool John Moores, do you believe now these universities have more of an onus upon them to actually, you know, detail to students, you know, what exactly the realities are working within the industry?
Yeah, definitely. I can't say that doesn't happen already. I'm not sure. Again, you know, I've not done a course for so long that I don't know. You know, someone who I've kept in contact throughout my career, Barry Drust. I know that, you know, I have conversations with him. He is so 100% tuned into this. Someone who's been a massive program leader in terms of football, and he's there's a lot of people in English football who've come underneath his wing, whether it's doing their undergrads, their masters, their PhDs, and I know for a fact he very much understands and appreciates and communicates the demand and the, you know, how difficult's the wrong word, but demanding it is working in football. So I can't say that happens at every single institute, and I know that institutes from the top level, obviously, it is a numbers game and getting people through the door, and financial reasons, it's important. So deterring people before they even embark on it is probably not going to happen. But I think once people have sampled an undergraduate, I'd like to think that they would have a good at least knowledge of what the demand is. I still think until you experience it, it's very difficult for you to make a judgment. You know, if someone's saying to you, right, you know, you're going to get minimum wage and you're going to work 50 hours a week and you're not going to be able to have a choice really on when you go on holiday or whether you go to this or this family event or whatever, I think the majority of people would just say, I'll take that. And then maybe see how it goes for a year or 2 or 3. And I think, again, that's a common thing that's happening in football. Not just people with experience are coming away from the game, but people are maybe coming in and sampling it for a couple of years and thinking, no, this isn't for me. Which is fine. I think it's maybe too much. at the moment, and some of those things are rectifiable. But again, that is the reality, whereby universities can obviously profess on the demand, and they should profess on the demand of the job. Ultimately, I'm sure people are going to want to make their own decision anyway.
Of course. I mean, I think one key point, which you alluded to earlier on, Chris, was that trial and error, so to speak. And, you know, what we discussed off camera once more about people, you know, putting their life, so to speak, on autopilot, putting on the blinkers, just saying, yeah, single focus, narrow-mindedness, I'm going to work in football, without having amassed all the necessary information to make, you know, a decent decision, so to speak. You know, from my own experience entering the industry, I mean, from speaking to people, you know, on a similar scale as myself, people above with countless years of experience, just being in an environment now at an academy level, learning from people from all corners of the globe on a daily basis. You know, it's not a linear journey. It's very much non-linear development. And, you know, for me, as you said earlier on, you didn't want your own post on LinkedIn or your interview with The Athletic to seem like, you know, you're a whistleblower, so to speak. But I think it really does take somebody like yourself speak about the working conditions within the football industry. And I really think Pacey Performance Salary Index, I think once more objective information becomes available about the profession, I think that's only when we'll be able to see change. But going forward, Chris, I mean, do you think there can be changes made in the short term, such as, I mean, regulation changes, a formal union, which has been mentioned in the Athletic piece? Or do you think over time it's going to take all parties, it's going to be more of a cultural change?
Yeah, I think the formal union, you know, in the Athletic piece, kind of the formal union thing is something that I just brought up as an example of what potentially could be done. I'm not sure how much that would solve, because, you know, the players' union is unbelievably strong, but for obvious reasons. Players, you know, decide they're not playing tomorrow, there's no football. You know, if a sports scientist or a physio or a group of support staff decide that they're not going to work, the club can still operate. And I get that. And that is why footballers are paid millions of pounds, and, you know, support staff are paid a very small percentage of that. But so I think the strength of a union is it's only as strong as the members. And I think it may be difficult to instigate, I don't know, minimum pay outside the government levels, minimum pay things. These things could happen. I just think it would be really, really difficult. What I think would be, I think information's really important, objective information. So when we're talking about inflation of salaries, you know, I'm just going off my experience, but when I see what I've been paid through my career, maybe an understanding of what other people have been paid during their career and what people get paid now, I would be very surprised if salaries have moved with inflation. I'm pretty 99% sure they haven't. Like I say, entry salary in 2006 was pretty much the same as what the entry salary is now. So that's 15 years worth of inflation, which, you know, that's a lot. That's a lot. You know, information on that side of things would be powerful. So whether there's another questionnaire or data gathering, you know, looking at maybe more experienced staff and their salaries at X point in time for this position and comparing to now, and just seeing the extent of whether salaries have been moved with the times, how that compares to other professions, how that compares to, you know, probably the most battered people in financially, nurses, how that compares to footballers, because footballers' wages have massively been inflated and they have moved with the additional influx of money that's come into the sport. So obviously from a I think back in 2011, 12, when Blackburn were in the Premier League, I think the TV rights were around about 30 million. Now they're 100 million plus. So you're talking triple the amount of income, which is a mainstay of most clubs' income, is the TV money. So the income and the revenues tripled, but support staff salaries have basically stayed the same level. So someone needs to come to me and tell me how that seems right. I'm not saying that they should have tripled, but I'm just saying there's got to be somewhere in between the two, surely. And I think information showing lack of inflation of wages, increase in revenues, inflation of players' wages, maybe inflation of managers' wages, and how does that compare to the support staff is important. And if people at the top decide, you know what, it is what it is, get on with it or don't, then you've got your answer. You are where you are.
You would think once more information, as you speak about, Chris, becomes readily available and accessible, that circumstances will change. Now, more importantly, since leaving football, Chris, what have you been getting up to?
Well, listen, this is the other side of things. So my major reason of leaving football, I think this has become a little bit misunderstood, really. There's obviously people who work in football, just want to work in football. You think about, we talked off camera, I was saying, someone like a Roy Hodgson, just completely dedicated to football his whole life, because that's what he wants to do. Whereas for me personally, as I've gone through working in football, I've loved it and loved the memories and working with the people I've worked with. But then you realize you want variety in life and you want to do different things. And you can't really do that in football because the demand is there that you can't have the time to step away and have a few months doing something or whatever it is. And I don't necessarily see it as a decision from a burnout point of view, as much as just wanting to continue to enjoy life and pivoting on to something a bit different. So for me, I've still kind of got my toe in. I'm working with a company called Kairos, who are a scheduling comms company, who I've touched base with when I was leaving Blackburn, and was really impressed with their system. So I'm doing a day a week, just working with them, consulting with them. But for the majority of the rest of the time, I'm involved with property, basically. So I've purchased a property to renovate, but it's not just a financial thing. It's actually going to get my hands dirty and going on tiling courses and plastering courses and plumbing courses and seeing how much work I can do myself, learning new skills, working with my hands really, and going and doing something completely different and starting from the bottom again, really, which is where I am. I'm basically a 17-year-old working in the property industry, which is, again, it's motivating. It brings variety to life, and spending time with a family, and I can go and do a 60-hour week if I want to do one, but if I want to do no hours in the week, I can do that as well. I'm not going to miss any family events anymore. I'm going to the lads' cricket training session this afternoon. I'm pretty sure Blackburn are away, so I would have missed that. All these different things. I've got variety to life, whereas I've loved what I've done for 15 years, but it was very, very focused on one thing. Now I've got the opportunity to do a lot of different things.
I think certainly that statement, variety is the spice of life. I think that's what you're looking at.
that is me. But again, that's me. That's not necessarily everybody. And I think, again, that's why people will be confused with the decision that I've made, because that won't be their mindset. And that's fine. That's not like a competition of who's right or wrong. There's no black and white right or wrong answer. It's just everybody pursues what they want to pursue, really. And there's lots of people in football who will work in football until somebody kicks them out, because that's their love. That's what they want to do. That's their identity in life. And, it's great that those people have that, but my decisions are just different.
I think that's such an important clarification to make as well, Chris, that, no two people are the same in life. you know, and that's with respect to football as well. We speak about non-linear development. And I think, you know, when you come to make a decision such as yours, it's not just black or white. You have to look at the holistic big picture, so to speak. I think that's something which you've shown over the last 30 or so minutes. Chris, from a personal point of view, I'd like to take this time to thank you for coming on. Wish you and your family all the luck and success going forward, and hope to have you on again in the future. Top man.
Well, thanks very much for the invite, and it's been great chatting. Thanks, Connor.
Top man. Thanks, Chris.
Cheers.